Are you trying to figure out how to set your pricing? Are you questioning if the pricing you have now is accurate? Getting this right has generated millions and millions of additional dollars inside my businesses. I'm going to show you how to do this, and we're going to keep it simple so that you can transform your take-home pay. We're going to look at how do you set pricing, how do you make sure your pricing is making you money, and how do you optimize it? And optimizing it is where all the magic's at. That's how you get a much bigger paycheck. Let's look at how to do this. I know what you want. You want one simple formula that will tell you all your pricing, and it will make you a ton of money. But the reality is, it's more complicated than that. I don't know your industry, what services you offer, what type of client you serve, what your costs are to run the business. I can't possibly tell you exactly how to price, but I can point you in the right direction, and I can actually give you a pretty simple calculation. But here's my ask. This is only a launching point. This is only to get you started, or maybe only to clean up some of the mistakes you're making. But what I ask of you is, I have a lot of videos coming on pricing. Please make this just the getting started point. These types of videos make me really nervous because I'm leaving out so much in hopes of making them simple so that you can actually apply the information. There's a much better way to do what I'm describing. I'm assuming you don't know your COGS. I'm assuming you don't know your data. I'm assuming you don't look at your data. I'm assuming you don't know these things. And if you do, awesome. But I'm assuming that you don't, so I can help you get started. So there's gaps in what I'm about to tell you, and there's risk in me giving broad direction because I could send you down the wrong road. But I'm going to try because I know that's what 90% of people need, and I want to help you with this. But again, my ask, please just start here. Keep watching my videos on pricing. Go deep with this and refine your pricing. Start to learn your numbers. Maybe hire an expert in the industry to help you learn your numbers. And you'll be ahead of 99% of people in the industry, whatever industry it is that you serve. So let's get started. How do we figure out your pricing? We have to start, and there's no getting around this, we have to start by understanding what does it cost you to produce an hour of work. And we have to do a little bit of guessing here because I'm guessing you don't know your data and you can't just download all this information. So here's how we're going to start. We need to build an hourly rate, okay? One more thing. In this example, I'm talking about businesses that are labor intensive. Lawn mowing, fertilization weed control, pest control, house cleaning, gutter cleaning, things of that sort. I'm not talking about project-based work, like installing a landscape, installing an outdoor kitchen, building a pool, installing an HVAC system. I'm very intentionally focusing for simplicity on heavy labor businesses that have virtually no materials or very, very little material cost, okay? I will talk about all that in a different video, but this will be plenty to get you started. All right, so we need to figure out what does it cost you to produce an hour of work. What I'm talking about applies to all kinds of services, but for the sake of an example, I'm using lawn mowing. Almost everybody can understand a lawn mowing example. So let's say, over here in the top left, that a team member costs you $22 an hour. And you might say, hey, I mow lawns by myself, and I want to make $70 an hour. I don't care. What I care about is what would it cost you to hire an individual to do that. I don't want to use your numbers. It's going to screw everything up. We want to think about this from the standpoint of running a business where you hire people to do the work. So if you want to make $70, great, but don't calculate it this way. What would it cost you to go hire a person to actually mow the lawn, drive the truck, do the work for you? Let's use $22 an hour. All right, so that's a starting point. We don't know what COGS is. I'm guessing you don't know your COGS. COGS is cost of goods sold. An easier way to think about it is it's the cost to deliver the service. It's the cost to do the job. You wouldn't incur this cost if you didn't do the job. So as an example, you have costs in your business, like It may be an office, maybe some software, a truck. You have those costs whether or not you do a job tomorrow. The cost you do incur if you do a job tomorrow is the cost to pay an hourly employee to go to the job and mow the lawn. You incur the cost in fuel to get the employee to the job. You incur the cost to use weed eater line at the job. There are these costs that you incur only when you do the job. And if you don't do the job, you don't incur the costs. That's COGS, the cost to perform the service. So all we need to do is figure out what is the cost to perform the service. And there's a little bit of guessing that's happening here. So back to the $22 an hour. If it's just you, figure out what you'd have to pay somebody. If you have a company and you have 7 employees, on average, what do you pay somebody to mow a lawn? You're considering the cost of the person that drives the truck and is the foreman, and you're also considering the cost of the individual that's just walking behind the mower. Probably 2 different prices. If you're cleaning a house, it's the price of the person that's in charge and the price of their helper. Average it together. You get an average price per hour to do the work. So that's going to be your labor cost. So we're just trying to figure out what's it going to cost us to do this thing. So now we have a labor cost. In this example, $22 an hour. But there's more. There's this thing called burden. It's these additional costs that get tacked on to what we pay the employee. We don't really just pay them $22 an hour because there are payroll taxes. And maybe you have workers' comp. And so there's a cost of insurance. Maybe your company offers health insurance and a 401k. There are these other expenses related to producing 1 hour of work. I can't give you the exact number, but to give you some directionally accurate information just to get you started, a lot of companies are going to do nothing more than payroll tax and maybe workers' comp. So as a floor, I think you can use 15%. It's not perfect, directionally accurate. If you're a company that does health insurance and 401k, you might need to use 30% here, meaning if you're providing benefits, this number needs to be much higher. You need to figure that out for you, okay? So let's just say it's 15% for the sake of a simple example. That means we need to multiply $22, the average price we pay to produce an hour of mowing, times 15%. That gives us an hourly rate of $25.30. That's basically our labor rate. You'll hear people call this the loaded rate, okay? But it's just what we're really paying per hour to do the work. This is where it gets a little tricky. To do this right, you really need to figure out, on average, what it costs you to get the truck to the property in fuel cost. There's some maintenance cost on the equipment. There's fuel cost on the equipment. There's some supplies, like eventually you have to replace mower blades and weed eater line. There's uniforms. There's these costs that go into producing the job. The challenge is, I can't give you this number. It's going to be a small number in this mowing example because we're trying to get it to an hourly basis. Without going off in the weeds, but so you know how this normally works, what you would do is you take a year's worth of your data. So you take a year's worth of your expenses for mowing, such as your fuel cost, your weed eater line, your trash bags, your dump fees. You take all of that, and then you'd also look up, we mowed 1,000 hours last year, and you divide those expenses by 1,000 hours, and you'd get a rate, and maybe it would be 75 cents an hour in miscellaneous costs on average to mow a lawn. That's how you would do it, but you probably don't have this data because few do. And so we've got to sort of make up a number here, and I don't know how to give you this number. But as an example, let's just say we think it's $1 an hour. $1 for every hour we sell, $1 kind of gets us close to recovering the costs of the mower, the mower fuel, the trash bags, the truck fuel to get there, the mower blades, etc. You got to just guess at this one. There's some number that needs to go here, and it's not a big number. Okay. All right. So now we know what it costs to produce the work. This is step one. The next step is the easy part. It's just doing some math. But we need to figure this out for each of our services. And I'm going to say this a couple times. This is just the getting started point. The real money is going to be made in double checking this data frequently. I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. And the real money is going to be made in optimizing this pricing and really refining it over time. That's how you're going to double your paycheck. That's how you're going to tremendously change how much money you personally make and take home. So first, do this for each service. You're not going to get it perfect, but you're just trying to get in the ballpark. We're going to clean it up over time. Okay? Now this next part is what makes me nervous. This part right here is what makes me very hesitant to even record this video, but I'm just going to suck it up and do it as I am and hope that I can get you started. Okay? So there's this concept that I rely on heavily, which is called cost of goods sold percentage. It's basically a target cost of goods sold, cost that I'm trying to achieve. So for example, if maybe for mowing, I want to keep my cost of goods sold to about 45%. I'll explain this just a little better. Maybe for pest control, I want it to be low 30s. I can't give you these numbers exactly. What I would do here is if you're serious, I would encourage you to find a consultant in your industry who will know these numbers very well, and they can give you the numbers that you need to be aiming towards. They can help you calculate your data, and they can just answer all your questions. My goal is not to do that. My goal is to just kind of point you in the right direction. And I'm basically just using data that I'm aware of inside my businesses. Okay? So from a COGS standpoint, if my COGS, my target is 40%, that means if I sell a job for $100, then only $40 of that job can go to the expense of doing the work. So in other words, if I sell a job for $100 and my target COGS, my goal is 40%, then it means only $40 could have gone into the labor I paid the team to do the work, including this burden concept, payroll, workers' comp, and including the additional expenses like fuel, weeder line, etc. That's what that COGS number means. Again, you don't have to get too caught up on it. But the reason I need to bring it up is because in your industry, for the service you sell, there is a number that is a good number. And this is why, again, I point you back to consultants and advisors, and in some rare cases, coaching groups. I rarely see that they're very good with this, where they can help you figure out this number for you. I will tell you from my experience, if you're around 40%, you're probably pretty safe. If you're above 50%, I'd start to get nervous. If you're like 30, you're probably doing great. I've got a video coming in a couple days that goes deep into this topic. I'd encourage you to watch it because I'm glossing over it in this video. But I'll tell you that if you're kind of in this, call it 35 to 45 range, even maybe 50 depending on what the service is, you're probably okay, but this is very dangerous advice, especially as you start creeping at 50 or above. So generally, if you're kind of in this 35 to 45 range, you're probably okay in a labor-intensive business. I am not giving you enough information, so I'm just going to put my disclaimer out there one more time. This makes me very nervous to be giving you this, but this is how you do it. All right. So if I was targeting a 40%, and I don't know if that's right for you, but it tends to be a number that's pretty safe for labor-intensive businesses, then there's a markup number. And that markup is basically, the markup's 2.5. So then all I have to do is multiply these costs by 2.5, and I get my target man-hour rate, which will produce a 40% COGS. Let me try to restate that. There's a COGS number for whatever service you provide that is ideal. And if you get involved in your industry and you talk to consultants, they will help you figure out what this number is. I can say generally 40% is a number that people make money at. The lower this number, the more likely you are to be making lots of profit. The higher this number is, above 40, the less likely you are to be making profit. There are a lot of people that make nice profit even at 50%. But in my world, based on all the services we sell, I don't want to be at 50%. That feels too high to me. So trying to come up with one number to point you in the right direction, I feel pretty safe for most companies at 40%. If you have tons of expenses, overhead expenses, marketing expense, expensive trucks, expensive salespeople, expensive admin people, then you need this COGS to be pretty low. But I will talk about all that in greater detail in another video. There's this markup number that I'll also talking about in that video. So as an example, if you're targeting 40% COGS, your markup's 2.5. If you're targeting 45 COGS, then it's 2.22. At 35%, it's 2.86. You should watch this video when it comes out in a few days. So all you have to do is figure out what it costs you, which we already went over, to produce 1 hour work. You then multiply that 1 hour by the markup rate that gets you your target COGS. And that gives you your target man-hour rate. This target man-hour rate has always been one of the most important numbers in my world. Once I know this rate, then calculating a price is quite simple. So all I got to do is do this math one time for every service, and I get a target man-hour rate. Once I have that rate, this is like a one-time thing. Over time, you'll improve this number. You'll iterate on it. But once I got this, which you can do it pretty fast, I just showed you exactly how to do it. Then in the future, when I bid a job, it's a lawn mowing job. I go out and I look at the lawn mowing job and I say, this is going to take me, it's going to take one person 1 hour to do this job. Well, if that's the case, all I do is I multiply 1 hour, that's my budgeted time, times my man-hour rate, and I got my price. If I look at that mowing job, I say, this job is going to take us 1.5 hours. However you get there, you might measure it, whatever your process is, doesn't matter. But you look at it and you say, hey, this is going to take me 1.5 hours, or we'll do a half hour since that's what I typed in. Then it's going to cost me $32. You get the idea. It's going to take 3 hours. It's going to cost $197 to produce this job. Why? Because it's 3 times 65.75. That's the number I need to sell work at per hour to generate 40% COGS. It's that simple. So this is the formula. You need to figure out first, what does it cost you to produce 1 hour work? And then second, what does your markup need to be to achieve whatever your target COGS is for that specific service? And go find somebody that can tell you exactly what that number should be for you in your industry, the services you sell, to the clients you sell to. There's a number. And I can't possibly tell you what that exact number is. I can only tell you what some safe numbers are, as I did. Okay, so now we have figured out what we need to sell work at. Step 2. Are we actually hitting the number? So let me tell you a quick story. When I started City Turf, business partner and I started it. I don't want to take all the credit. When we started the business, I didn't know what I was doing, and he didn't know what he was doing either. But we got one thing right, and that thing was every time we went out to do a job, we would write down how long it took us to do the job. The idea was we could figure out this per man-hour rate. And I don't know where I got this idea from because I was not great at my collections. I wasn't on top of my accounting all the time. I didn't know how to price. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. But I did one thing. And I said, hey, how long does it take us to do a job from week to week, from client to client? And how much do we make for every hour that we're selling? And I'm going to show you how to calculate this, because when you know how to calculate it, it'll keep you out of trouble. This is the only thing I feel like I got right in the early days from a number standpoint, from an understanding of my data, and it saved our butt, and we ended up with a good company. And then eventually I started to learn, and then we ended up with a really good company. This is like the most basic must-do, have-to-do stuff. So let me show you how it works. Now let's figure out if you're actually making the money you think you're making. And if we figure out you're not, then we're going to fix it. And this is how you start the process of optimizing, and this is where the magic is at. And again, this is what saved my butt when I didn't have the faintest idea what I was doing. So remember, we figured out we need to be billing an hour of work at $65.75 an hour per person to make money. In our example, the job was going to take 1 hour, 1.5 hours. So we priced the job at $98. Great. So we think we're going to be making $65 a man hour. Now we need to find out if we're actually doing that, because if we're not, then we're not making the profit we think we're making. We underpriced the job. So what I got right was every time we went out to a job, we tracked how much time it took from the minute we arrived to the minute we left. I like to describe it as from ignition to ignition. They pull up in front of the property, they turn off the ignition, the timer starts, they unload, they do the job, they load the truck back up, they get back in the truck, they write down their notes, fill out whatever they need to do in their mobile device, turn back on the ignition, clock stops. Total job time at the property. You want to know that amount of time. So in my example, let's say that took 40 minutes. There was 40 minutes at the job site, 40 man minutes. So if you have one guy, it's one individual. Well, let's just show you how this works. So actually, let's do it a different way. So it's 40 minutes at the job site. There were 2 men. So that means there were 40 minutes plus 40 minutes. What is that? 1 hour and 20 minutes. We need to do a little math. We basically we do a little calculation, and here it is. And by the way, I'm going to give you this spreadsheet. You can download it. But here's the calculation, but you can also just download the spreadsheet. And we convert this man minutes into an hours ratio. Okay? You can just copy a formula, so I'm not going to get in the weeds on it. With this number, I can calculate what's called man-hour rate. So the first thing I need to do is know how long were we on the job site, and I need to get my little ratio here. This is very common. This was so unbelievably successful for me in CityTurf that when we started Service Autopilot, this was built in from the beginning, because this is the magic. This is where it's at. It's, to me, one of the single most important things you can do in a labor-based business. All right, so we now know how long it took us. It took us 1.33 hours, okay? The price was $98. Remember, that's what we charged the job out at, $98. We divide that by 1.33, how long it took us, and we were making $73.97 a man hour based on having spent 1 hour and 20 minutes at the job site. So, how'd we do? Well, we did great. We made more money than what our goal was. We knew that if we charged $65 a man hour, that was going to deliver to us a 40% COGS. We know that 40% COGS is a number that will allow us to hit our profit goals. And we outperformed it. We actually made $73 an hour, almost $74 an hour. So we made even more profit. So our COGS on this job, I don't know what it would be, but they were in the 30s. So we won. Now let's say that this job took us 50 minutes times 2 people. If we do the math, we made $59 a man hour. Remember, the goal was 65. We didn't hit 40% COGS. This number was in the higher, it's 40-something percent, meaning we're not hitting our profit goals. We are not making enough money. This one number right here is magical. It tells me that I need to fix the pricing, or it tells me something different. As an example, if every day I get my per man hour rate on every single job, which in what I would call good software packages, this is built into it, then all I have to do for every job every day is scan my screen on my computer, or if they're handwriting this, we got to, you're putting in a spreadsheet, you got to scan the spreadsheet. Please just get a software package that will do this for you. It'll change your world and it'll make you profitable. All I got to do is every day scan all the jobs we did for the day, because the software should be calculating your per man hour rate. And if it doesn't, do it manually, which is what we did for years before the software existed to do this. And it was still worth it. And now let's say this was miss job and we made $59 an hour. What do? Well, I know either today something happened at that property which led to us not hitting the goal. I like to use the example of maybe they got a trampoline. Maybe they're having their fence redone. Maybe Miss Smith talked to them for 10 minutes. Something happened. And if it was an anomaly, like she talked to them today versus, or the fence, that's an anomaly, then no problem. I'm not going to worry about it. But if it's, they got a trampoline, well, this is going to be a problem now from every week moving forward because the team has to move the trampoline. It's just created this new cost to do the job. We're no longer hitting our profit goal for this client. So what does that tell me? It tells me I need to raise the price for that client. If across mowing, week after week after week, we're hitting 59, 61, 62, 54 for all the different jobs, I know that I am underpricing mowing in general. I am not hitting my goal. This one number tells me everything. I scan it on a daily basis and I find my problems that week and I can fix them that week. This is how you don't let bad pricing get away from you and destroy the profitability of your company. It's really, all you got to do is scan one number and it tells you everything. And when you find that you've got a problem, then we fix it. So let's move on to now what I'd call optimization. This is where we discover if we have a problem. Now I'm going to get a little more advanced and I'm going to show you two things. One is how do we eventually price really fast? And then how do we optimize our pricing? It makes sense to cover both of these things right here. But this optimization of pricing, it's magic. It's where you grow your income significantly. It's where you get ahead of everybody else. So the way I like to think about optimizing pricing is, I gave you an example of at a job level, we noticed that for Miss Smith, we weren't making enough per man hour. We weren't hitting our targets. So I either had a problem just this week or I have an ongoing problem. I need to raise the price. Okay? But what about, let's look at it even more broadly. Before we do that, here's where I'd love to see you go if you haven't already done this. If you're selling pest control or house cleaning, we need to know the square footage of every property, every home. If you're selling lawn mowing, we probably need to know the gross lot square footage, or maybe the turf. If you're selling fertilization, weed control, aeration, grub treatments, we need to know the turf, square footage of every property. For carpet cleaning or house cleaning, maybe it's number of bedrooms. For power washing, maybe it's concrete. There's a number that will allow us to eventually just get that number and be able to provide a price. As an example, I know if a lawn is 5,000 to 6,000 square feet, I know exactly what to charge. If it's 2,000 to 2,500 square feet in turf, I know exactly what to charge for fertilization weed control. If the house is 3,000 to 3,500 square feet, I know exactly what to charge for pest control. That's where you want to eventually get, because that allows you to price very fast via your website, via text, over the phone. It lets you outsell the competition. And that's really exciting. But here's the other reason. It's for optimization of pricing. So as an example, we're going to look at this section right here. Once I know those square footages by client, we can start to figure out where we are making money and losing money by type of property. Okay? So remember a moment ago I said Miss Smith was actually only making $59 an hour and our target was, I believe, at $65. If that was an anomaly that week, no problem, we ignore it. If it's a problem every week, we raise her pricing to get her up to the $65 target. But that's a one-off case. That's at a client level. Now let's think about it at a bigger level. So if we track all of our data, our start and stop time, and how much we earn per man hour by client, by job, and your software, a good software system can do this, then, and I used to do this in a spreadsheet, and it was a bit of work, but it was so worth it. So as an example, eventually I might figure out that on average, when we do a 4,000 square foot lawn or less, gross lot mowing, that we're making $59 a man hour. Maybe that's the size of Miss Smith's lawn. But what I'm seeing is if I take all 100 lawns we do that are 4,000 square feet or less, we take all the per man hour rates and we average them. If they average out to $59 a man hour, I know I've got a problem. When we're mowing 4,000 square foot lawns, I'm not making enough money. I'm not hitting our target rate. And this could be for house cleaning. This could be for pest control. It could be for any of these services. Now, I could go client by a client and adjust the pricing and fix the pricing for all the clients that have properties of 4,000 square feet or less that are making less than $65 an hour. I can raise their prices individually. But what this tells me is I need to start selling all future work when a property comes in at 4,000 square feet or less. I need to start selling it at a new price that will get me my $65 an hour target. So it's a two-step process. I first change the price for all work I'm selling in the future when it's a 4,000 square foot or less job. And then of the 100 clients that have homes, gross lots that are less than 4,000 square feet, I find everybody that's earning under $65 an hour and I adjust their price. And I'm going to show you how to do that. As an example, if I were to plot out all my data, if the lawn is 4,000 to 5,000 square feet, on average, we're hitting our numbers. If it's 5 to 6, we're not. Price needs to be adjusted. We need to sell at a new price moving forward. 6 to 7, hitting the numbers, you get the idea, okay? This is magic. Yes, this takes a little work. This is how you completely transform the game. This is how you start liking your business again. This is how you don't feel burned out anymore. This is how you actually double your paycheck. This is how you transform how much money you're taking out of your business. It does take a little bit of work, but it's actually not that difficult, and it's really not crazy difficult if you get a software solution and you start having your team either write down a start and stop time on their route sheets, or better, you use the mobile devices and you track the time, but that software has to calculate this data for you. If it doesn't, I'd look for a different software package. Okay, so now okay, great. How do we raise the price? How do we figure this out? Well, I'm going to give you that math. So in this example, we were selling work for, remember, we're using the Miss Smith example. Her lawn is 4,000 gross square feet or less. It's a mowing example. By the way, these numbers are they're silly. Like, you wouldn't scale up your mowing prices this much. It's all example data. All right. So her price was $30.68 to mow her lawn. That price was originally supposed to make us $65 a man hour, but it's not. It's only making us $59 a man hour right here. It's only making 59, it's supposed to be making 65. Why? Because it's actually taking 31 minutes versus 28. Remember, time is what drives how much we're making. Pretty simple. So we've got to do a little math here to calculate the new price. There's a variety of ways to calculate this. Math is pretty simple. If we originally based our pricing on average, it takes 28 minutes to do a lawn that's 4,000 square feet or less, and it's actually taking 31, all we have to do is recalculate the price using 31 instead of 28. And so that's the formula here. And again, you can download the spreadsheet. I'm just converting this, doing a time calc here, dividing 31 minutes by 60. I get my number for the formula. I multiply that times my target rate, and I've got my new price. Moving forward, I need to sell all jobs that are 4,000 or less square feet at $33. Now, why is it 4,000 or less? You should usually have a minimum because you incur costs to get the truck to the property. And so there's usually a floor. You've got gas to get there. You've got labor to get the team there. You've got expenses to get there. So there should be a floor, a minimum. And that's it. So now I start selling all future work at $33.97 for this size property. I go to all the clients that are not making at least $65 a man hour, and I adjust their price accordingly. You can either adjust them all up to this new rate, or you can adjust them individually, basically do the math for each of their accounts. Like, one client's taking 33 minutes, one's taking 30 minutes, and you just adjust them that way. Up to you. And then you repeat the process. You keep tracking the data. And after you do this for a while, you will have found that you have perfected your pricing tiers, and you know exactly how much you need to be selling work for to get your target man hour rate. And when you do this, you become way more profitable. If you're covering your overhead in your business, every dollar you raise your price is a dollar that goes straight into your pocket as pure profit. And that's why this is one of the single most transformative things you can do. So that's the process. We first figure out how to set our pricing on a per hourly basis. Then we track our pricing to make sure we're hitting our goals. And then we optimize our pricing. If you go to 5 for 50 and you put in your email address, I will send you this spreadsheet. If you want to go really deep with pricing and get really good at it and do it like the pros, watch this next video.